and welcome to Silver Sunday. This Sunday, March the 27th. I am particularly sad because my Hogs lost in the Elite Eight. They made it to the Elite Eight, but they lost. For those of you who don't have any idea what I'm talking about, college basketball.
Yeah,
so
I kind of figured.
I'm done.
It's March Madness.
It is March Madness. It is. So we've got a different crew with us tonight. So it's going to be fun. We're going to have a fun topic. But you know the way these things go. If you're a regular listener of ours, we have to shout out to some people. First and foremost, thanks to Daytona Beach Comic Con for being a Silverline sponsor. We love Daytona Beach Comic Con. And you should too. You should make your plans to attend September 10th and 11th, I think. It's either 10th or 11th, 11th or 12th. So you can always check the website. Oh, you know what? I saw Aaron lean up. So it's probably right here on this little ticker somewhere. So watch the little ticker for the exact date. So, if you like comic books, and you probably like comic books if you're here with us, you will like Daytona Beach Comic Con. Make your plans now. Also, if you are in Orlando and you want to find Silverline Comics, you should go to Coliseum of Comics on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline Comics. They carry all the Silverline comics. In fact, they support, I'm not going to say all, but I think they support all of our Kickstarters. And so you can get, so here's the deal about that too. Because of their level of support, when you go to Coliseum of Comics, you're going to get our comic books with the Coliseum of Comics logo on it. That's a very limited run for you can't get those through us. You can't get those through the Kickstarter. You got to go to Coliseum of Comics if you want your unique Coliseum of Comics logo on your comics. So we encourage you to do that. Coliseum of Comics, they're a great comic shop in Orlando. And we're working to get in more comic shops, but we got, baby steps. We'll take that. If you like fan stuff, you should check out OCD, who is one of our sponsors as well. OCD, Orlando Collector Deviants. They stream every Thursday night, which they've told us, do not stream on Thursdays. You got to stream every night. Don't stream on Thursdays. I've told them we would not go up against their stream. In fact, I will probably be on there in a couple of weeks. So I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point in time. And last but not least, a big shout out to Kablam Printing. Kablam, if you are an independent creator and you need your comic book printed, go to Kablam. They print all of our comic books, and they don't print our extra stuff because they don't do stickers and stuff like that. But they print all of our comics and our graphic novels. So if you've gotten anything from us that is a comic book or a graphic novel, they printed it, and they do a fantabulous job. So, okay, business out of the way. Aaron, tell people who you are.
I'm the artist on Fire Rush Penciler, and I'm doing the Obsoletes, which I'm working on the second issue now. And I draw stuff. Sometimes ink or color stuff, very rarely, but sometimes I do those too.
we are actually anticipating Obsoletes for a May Kickstarter, right?
I think so. The first issue's in their hands. That's out of my hands. I'm on the second issue. I got to do the cover, which I always forget. It's funny. Most artists love to do covers. I always forget about them, or I always do them last, and I don't know why.
Because storytelling is important to you.
Yeah, and it's fun.
You want to tell stories, right? Anybody can draw a pinup cover.
Yeah,
thing,
so
right?
even when you said you need a cover, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, we need a cover.
And joining us tonight, he is generally more a regular on, or kind of semi-regular on the Wednesday stream. Jeremy Kahn. Jeremy, say hello. Tell people who you are.
Well, I am Jeremy, I think, and I do a lot of the coloring work on a bunch of the titles. Right now, I think I mentioned a bunch of times already, but right now I'm really almost done with the Cray stuff finally. In fact, we have that Kickstarter going April, you said?
In May.
May.
Yeah.
So that should have the first issue for that one, right?
Yes. It'll be issue number 1. So, and we're gonna try something a little different with this one. So we'll see how it goes.
Interesting.
Look, we can't talk about that one yet because we still got 84 minutes of another Kickstarter to get through. But we will talk about that one soon enough.
I'm sorry, I was very excited to finally get to that at some point.
What's that?
So no, sorry, I'm just very excited to finally be close to that one.
So that you're right, because Cray is a thing that you have been working on the longest.
Yes.
Right?
It was just fun when you look at the earlier issues compared to the later ones. You can see the coloring progressing.
Yeah. And of course now less people think that you didn't do anything in between that. I mean, you've done a whole bunch of other stuff as well. Yes. You've got a lot of personal projects as well as some you've been coloring on Friar Rush. Yeah. And you colored some Christmas stuff, and we've just got a handshake agreement to do Team Beetle.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. And I am Roland Man. I am the chief cook and a bottle washer of the show. Bobby Weskovich says, hello, big dummy. What's up, Screw Loose? And then he says, share y'all at Facebook at home. Thank you so very much, Jeremy. I'm going to pop you to the top. So when I put comments down there, it won't cover up your face. It'll cover up mine.
Surprised I'm not at the bottom then.
You know what? That's a good idea. I don't know why I didn't think of that.
I'm not sure you're doing me a favor with that, but
yeah.
So
he just has comments on all the time. Yes. They just never leave.
So we are in, as you can see, we're going to leave this up here for the duration of the clock anyway, 82 minutes. Let's see, we're at 60, 90. That'll end. What time will that end? Somebody help me out with math.
Hour 20, hour 22 minutes.
Okay, here we go. Right here it says 9:30 p.m.
Oh.
Right? That's what it says right
there. It's 5:09 where I'm at, so you probably be bested.
Oh yeah, I caught a couple minutes off, it looks like.
So this will end about the end of our stream. So we'll just leave this up here. And for those people popping in and out, we will encourage you. If you have not backed, please go and peek at the campaign and consider backing. We are, math, $24 away from our second stretch goal. Once we hit 2750, let's see if I can find it here. It's down here somewhere. Right. So we've unlocked the bookmarks already. That came at 2,500. Once we hit 2,750, we're going to get a director's commentary. Tim, TK, who's a writer of Wolf Hunter, is going to give us a kind of a director's commentary. I mean, it's not going to be a video. It'll be written. And but for those who have paid attention, Wolf Hunter is historical. It's alternate history. So there's a lot of real history involved, but obviously this stuff is not real. So so Tim's going to give us a commentary, and that should be really interesting. And I just noticed I have an exclamation point and a period there, man. And obviously we've got we've. I'm not sure. This is a talking about stretch. This is a big stretch to get this one right. So the ones that follow that is at 3,000. All the backers of the physical reward tiers get Grigri bags, a little voodoo Grigri bags, handmade by Barb Kalberg, who is you guys know her from Divinity, but she is actually coloring Sirens. So she's got all of these put together with all kinds, and she's got, I can't read it from here, but she's got all kind of ingredients in the bag, a little voodoo bag for you. So so if you have an enemy that you want to place a hex on, this would be a good chance to help us get up to that $3,000 stretch goal, and you can get your own voodoo bag and place.
Just keep the one for you, Roland, because I mean I'd be sending it to you anyways, right? So just, I mean, there's no reason to send it to me and send it back, right?
So Wubba had talked about joining us, and one of the things that I'm looking forward to with Wubba. So Wubba is he's wrapping up Cat and Mouse number 4, but he's also going to be doing the next story arc for Cat and Mouse, and it's going to have voodoo in it. And I've been, you know what, this book is, I've read this book probably 3 or 4 times. It's an old book. It's originally published in 1952, I think. No, 1946. My version is from 1983. So that's how long I've had that. But it's firsthand accounts of voodoo rituals, and it's a history of voodoo, all kinds of really cool stuff. And I've been anxious to get that and some of that voodoo lore into Cat and Mouse. And Waba has done just a great job. That first issue of that arc is done. If I gotta crack the whip more to get him to finish issue 4 so we can get onto it. But it looks really good, so I'm excited about that. Then if we can reach 3250, we're gonna have an Indie Comics digital bundle, and we've added one more to this. We've added Dan Scene has contributed Junkyard Joe to this, so you can see we've got Rob Haynes Adventure Digest. Ride Haynes Adventures, I think is just what that one's called. Biff Stone Monster Hunter, Miniature Man. We've got Javier Lugo's The Green Tempest. Our friends over at Cosmic Times. We have Arthur, Legend Continues. So yeah, so help us get there. We're going to leave this up here, and so we can kind of watch what happens. Oh, look at that. We're $2 away now. So whoever was listening and upped your, or I don't know if it was a new backer or someone just upped their pledge. Thank you so much. We are now up at $27.48. Let's see. You know what? Tommy couldn't be here, and so he sent this video. So we're gonna watch this. I think this is about a 4-minute video of Tommy. You guys ready for this?
No, I'm never ready for anything.
No, you're never ready for anything. Here we go. Tommy couldn't be here, so here's this video in his place.
So we are at Markham's Trail. This is the Popka. Well, where are we?
This is Lake Mary.
Lake Mary, and yeah, this is the Markham Woods mountain bike trail. People can ride out here with their bikes, or they can walk. Like we've seen a bunch of hiker folks. There's even lovebirds come out here and hang out.
Watch it, Tommy. Hey, how you doing? Morning.
So as you see, bikers coming both ways. We're on a trail here, and so we're just gonna goof off for a minute and see how it goes. What do you? Okay.
Hope I don't fall.
Hope we don't fall. Hope neither.
Okay, we're gonna. I don't know what's. Well, I may try that again here in a minute. I don't know if it's still trying to upload here to StreamYard, but we'll try this again in a minute.
On the edge of my seat. I want to know if they fall or not.
Yeah, I know. You keep leaving me in suspense.
I know, yeah, but it keeps stopping. I'm not sure why it's doing that. So, you know what? I wonder if there's another option here. Hold on. I bet. Let's try it this way. Whoa! Stop! Okay, so I am going to try this, but I'm not sure if it's going to have sound. That's my biggest question here. So I've got to remove that, and I have to. Let's see. Share. Not slides, not an extra camera, not a a video file. Oh, let's see if I can do that. Let's go to desktop. I'm sorry if you guys are watching. Here we go. Let's try this. The video uses a unique codex H.2500 browser doesn't support. All right, so let's see if I can do this. I know this is just captivating, isn't it?
I'm captivated.
I'm okay. So let's try this right here. Here we go. Can y'all hear that?
Yeah.
All right.
So we are at Markham's Trail.
Oh, and it looks better too.
This is a Popka. Well, where are we?
This is Lake Mary.
Lake Mary. Lake Mary, and yeah, this is the Markham Woods mountain bike trail. People can ride out here with their bikes, or they can walk. Like we've seen a bunch of hiker folks. There's even lovebirds come out here and hang out.
Watch it, Tommy. Hey, how you doing? Morning.
So as you see, bikers coming both ways. We're on a trail here, and so we're just gonna goof off for a minute and see how it goes. What do you? Okay.
I hope I don't fall.
Hope we don't fall. Hope neither of us fall. We'll see what happens. Is you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go.
Right behind you.
All right.
It's like Blair Witch found footage.
It is.
Are you trying to hold that ride?
Yeah. I'm just trying to show the people the trail.
First.
Isn't this neat?
It's a cool trail.
Yeah, we're gonna die. Okay.
Oh, no dying.
No dying.
We got comic books to make, dude.
Oh, that's right.
Pete's like, don't die. There's
No.
3 pages left to ink.
That's right. And Pete's gonna come out here and
Don't
Pete's,
die.
Pete's gonna come out here and ride with us.
Hey, did you see that? Oh, did you see that?
What was that?
Let's go back and look.
That was.
Check it out. How cool is that?
It's like all over the tree.
Is this where they make all these Silverline armbands?
Oh, you didn't know they grew on trees?
That is so weird. Well, let's get those bad boys.
Let's
Why are we
get
going
'em.
to leave them out here in the woods?
No,
That's crazy.
we got to find homes for them.
Maybe.
You know, it's like picking fruit. You got to get it when they're ripe. These are ripe.
They seem right. They pop right off the tree. Look at
Look
that.
at
That's
Yeah. That's gorgeous right there. That's,
Make mine Silverline. Here's another one. Here's another one. Let's see. Is there any more?
is this what's called low-hanging fruit?
They're out here. We just grabbed them off the tree. All right, everybody, make mine Silverline. Doo, 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 doo.
Okay, yeah. Tommy had to do that, right? I said I want solo. Where are we at? Oh, we lost a backer. What the heck? We're down to 27-29 now. Oh no.
The video. It was
The
cursed.
video did it. Tommy,
cursed.
man, we're gonna blame Tommy for this. What the heck? Oh man, yeah, we lost because we were at 77, and now we're at and we were $2 away. We're at 48, so we lost 29, 39. What is this? 18, I guess. 19. I can't do the math. Oh, we're sorry to see you go. Oh, there we go. Somebody got us up to 27.
Maybe they were adjusting it.
They could have been adjusting it. Yep. Thank you, whoever got us up to 2750. Woohoo!
And that's way to have fun. Just keep changing your amount throughout the whole stream.
Damn, don't do that. Don't encourage that. That'll give me a heart attack here, right? Okay, so tonight's topic. Well, I guess I should ask you guys if you got anything else to talk about before we jump onto the topic. Anything important happening that needs to be mentioned?
Nothing right now. Not really.
Jeremy's ready to jam. That's the
Yeah,
best
I'm like,
news.
I'm sitting there going like, I don't know.
No. Yeah,
I'm just so excited about my laptop. I'm sorry.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're ready to jam because you got your new laptop. So
Yes.
yeah. So remind me, Jeremy, via email or message. I got to get you. I do have those I do have about 10 Team Beetle pages. So remind me, and I can put those in your hands. So
Oh, yeah. And I had to get started on redoing that video I owe you.
Yeah, we got to get back to talking about the whole video thing. So, yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. So, tonight's topic is: do adaptations help or hurt comic sales?
You're talking
Now-
adaptations like movies or books?
Yeah.
Something okay.
Right. Yeah. So we have comic books, and so this is the comic came first, right? Episode, right? So the comic comes
Yeah.
first, and then it gets an adaptation, whether that be movie, a game, a TV show, a book, whatever. What
You
are
know,
what are
I
your
don't know. I
thoughts on
mean,
those?
it's funny because I kept thinking the other way around. Movies and stuff being adapted in the comics, which that always bothered me sometimes because it kind of like they were using comics as a marketing gimmick instead of making it like if I used to see a lot of like they don't do this that much anymore. Back in the 90s and 80s, they would make movies in the comics,
Yeah,
but it felt more like a marketing gimmick than an
and
actually
they
like
still do that
taking.
though.
They still do.
Yeah,
Rarely, not as much, but they do.
I mean,
It
just a
just
few,
felt.
just like 5 years ago, I wrote a movie adaptation.
Oh, did you?
I
Or a
did,
com?
yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know.
Yeah.
It
The
just
movie came
feels like.
first, and they asked me to do a graphic novel adaptation of it. So it was like 130 pages.
Oh, good. Oh, wow.
It was long,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, are we
Yeah,
talking about
because
like a
I
direct
was.
adaptation, like like the Watchmen comics to the movie, or the Marvel stuff, which does change up the source, so it isn't technically a straight adaptation?
I would say either one of those is fine. If the movie or the book owes its life to a comic book,
See,
I would.
Right.
I keep thinking about the manga industry because that's specifically driven by the adaptations they make for the manga, and that helps in turn um, generate sales for the original manga book as well.
I
But
mean,
over
well,
here in the
usually they
West,
make the manga, then they make the anime.
yeah,
Then the anime, then
So
it's like the circle. But they're usually
yes.
pretty verbatim. I mean, the anime is exact like the manga. I think where
so if I
Americans
were to
run
go
into. Go ahead, Roland.
if I were going to buy Attack on Titan, it would be just like the TV show.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking. Where we're talking, I was talking about something like Watchmen, which is pretty much a straight adaptation, which would be like the manga thing I'm talking about, or with the Marvel stuff in general, which is just more loosely based on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say either of those is fair game because both of those owe their film life to a comic book originally, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the comic is the original source material. It's the original format. So I would say,
Okay, in that
yeah.
case, I don't think there's any impact. Usually, the market for movies is completely different than comics. Like people going to see the movies, more often than not, have no interest in the comics themselves. I've seen this at plenty of conventions where people will say, oh, I'm just a fan of the movies. I'm not into comics.
Yeah.
Like I was selling a convention once, and there's a whole like family going around just as the Avengers. So I'm selling. I figured, okay, I'll call them, talk to them. And as soon as I call up to them, they come over. As I'm talking to them, oh wait, I'm actually, they said don't actually like the comic books. I don't read them, and everyone in the family didn't read them. However, they're all dressed as the Avengers because of the
Right.
movies, and that's what they're a fan of.
Yeah.
I see this constantly where people are more fans of the movies and know nothing about the comics they came from.
Right. Yeah.
This is why when, if they do adaptions of comics, the comic fans get irritated. I think, especially with Marvel and some of these that are so big that they don't care about pleasing the comic fans anymore. Because
do you
they built a movie audience.
Well, do you think that was ever the case?
I don't know. I mean, I think, if you're going to adapt a property into a movie, you have a built-in audience. You think it would be wise to cater to that audience initially to boost sales. But as it takes on a life of its own, I would assume you can just do kind of whatever you want.
Yeah.
I think they should try to appeal. The best thing I think would do is appeal to the people going to the theater. I know this costs money for them, but have a comic book in the theater, even if it's just a reprint of an old issue, to promote the comic series in addition to the movie. Like, go for a ticket. When you put the ticket to the person who checks it, he'll give you a free comic book, and that'll at least get them hooked. Because normally, chances of them going to a comic book store after the movie is very slim. At least this gets them an entryway to a
you would think, strangely enough, you would think that would work. And I've heard actual stories of people doing that. A lot of times, what the movie theaters end up with is a bunch of comic books on the floor.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, take it back then.
You would think, because again, you can give a comic book away for free, but trying to get them to read it, that's a whole nother issue.
Well, I would think they'd be excited to read it after seeing the movie. Hey, I want to see more of the story. hey, I got something in my hand here. I guess
I
not.
wish it worked that way, but it just really doesn't
All right.
sometimes.
Yeah.
I take back my suggestion.
So the data that I'm operating on is and I see your question there, Eric. I'll get to you in a second. The data that I'm operating on is old, right? But I remember back when and so there's been blockbuster movies since then, I guess is kind of the point. There were studies, marketing research that basically said, hey, when a comic book movie comes out, like the first Batman, comic sales experience a tiny spike. Now, not a big spike, but
Just a little
a blip. A blip is a better word, right? And because what happens is it or the guess is what happens is that these old comic fans were like, man, I used to buy Batman. I think I'm gonna go try out another Batman, and they go to the comic shop and then they look and they go, holy crap, this is not the Batman I remember, and holy crap, comic books aren't 50 cents anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So they'll probably buy something because they're in there, and the nostalgia and the sentiment about their childhood causes them to buy something, but they don't return. So market research indicates that it's not the case. It's not that movies don't really help comics.
No, they don't. And you wish it would. Strangely enough, the other thing too is, and this is kind of I think how modern technology has advanced. Watching movies and even playing video games to a degree, but watching movies and TV are very non-commitment sort of issue. In other words, if you read a comic, you have to sit down and read it. For a TV, you just stare at it. And I know that sounds weird to people, but in order to read something, to sit down, you have to engage with it. And a lot of people, the less engagement, the less work they have to do on their end to enjoy your product, the more apt they're apt to do it. If they have to engage and like read the comic or whatever, I mean, it's really hard to get people to read. They just don't read books. They don't read. I mean, we could talk about literacy, not that I'm going to, but you could talk about that, and people told me like, look, somebody who likes to read is going to read.
Yeah.
Somebody who likes to read comic books is going to read comic books. But to get a movie watcher to all of a sudden turn into a book reader, it happens, but not as much as you think.
So what's funny? I've been watching these Stan Lee. So yay, we got another backer, 2771 now.
Yay!
Thank you, whoever that was. So I've been watching a lot of Stan Lee videos here. I stumbled across one, the old Stan versus Jack kind of thing, and while I wasn't interested in that so much, it led me to another video that had it must have been ABC, NBC, somebody interviewing Stan from about 1975. Okay. And yeah, so Stan still didn't have. Oh, what?
He's readjusting it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you're right, because they're still the backer's still there. They're just adjusting. So, yeah, whoever that is like trying to get. Let's see how many heart attacks we can get rolling, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
And one of the things that Stan was saying was that he was advocating for comics, obviously, and the guy was like, well, who's going to read comics? And he was like, well, this is a great entryway to reading for young readers. And he said, we are in a generation where our kids are reading less and less thanks to the movies and television. And I'm like, wow, that kind of sounds like the same argument that we would have today about readers being distracted by, video games or what have you, right? And the fact that Stan was making that same argument back then I found it quite interesting.
It is. And I mean, the thing is I remember working with somebody who was helping him make a comic. And I said, at the time, the Clone Wars Star Wars cartoon was on Cartoon Network, and he wanted to make a cartoon. I was hoping to make a comic, then a cartoon, and all this stuff. And I said, well, you'll be competing against Star Wars. And he's like, no, I'm not. And I'm like, yeah, you are. And he's like, no. And there's this weird train of thought where like, you feel like these bigger properties are so big that they're not your direct competitors. But a lot of people who get in the comics don't realize is everyone is your competitor, especially video games and movies, because people only have so much money to spend on stuff. You want to try to get them not spend money on the stuff they want, but stuff on your stuff, and that's incredibly hard to do. So, what's more bang for your buck sort of thing. But it's weird how I've had people who go like, well, we're not competing against the big ones like Harry Potter. I'm like, yes, you are.
Yeah.
You are. I mean, it seems weird to think that, but is Silverline competing against those people?
Yeah.
Yeah. We are.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah, and exactly because these boxes back here, if someone buys a Spider-Man comic or Cat and Mouse, guess what? It's going in a bag and it's going in a box, right?
Yeah.
So Marvel comics are going to go right beside the Silverline. Well, maybe probably in a different box, but they're going to look just like this. Same thing for stores. If you go into a store, the store is going to have their Marvel comics displayed, their DC comics displayed, and they're going to have, hopefully, they'll have Silverline comics displayed. Now they'll be Marvel and DC and then Silverline, right? But you're fighting for that shelf space because you got to remember at the bottom line, it's all still a business. Eric says, evening, gents. Excited to get these new Kickstarter books. Question, though, Eric, we know that you're going to like them. We are super confident in that. And as you can see, we have 58 minutes to go. So,
I would say in answering Eric's question.
Well, let's ask the question. Has there ever been and this is just for the audio later, right? Has there ever been a comic adaptation of a movie that was originally a comic?
Well, I think a good example would be the Burton Batman movie. Yeah. Because the Batman movie is obviously based on the Batman comic. Then the comic adaptation of that movie is actually different than the movie because it's based on the earlier draft of the movie. So you actually have two different versions of the Batman movie then as a result, which actually is pretty regular with movie adaptations. Because you're basically, to get the thing out on time to meet the movie deadline, you're working on an earlier draft. Like if you ever check out some of the early Star Wars novelizations, they are really different than the final movies that came out. And you have
a lot of times because they're right. Same thing with book novelizations of movies. They could be kind of different, add scenes and whatever. And a lot of times because they're writing them while the movie's being made. So there's certain things they'll put in. Aliens did that with their novelization. But I was talking about Batman. I was thinking of Tim Burton's Batman because you had Tim Burton's Batman based on Batman comics, and they made an actual Tim Burton Batman comic book based on
Adaptation.
That had with the suit from the movie and the car and everything. Yeah, so it does happen.
Yeah,
Does it help? I don't know.
I would imagine, and I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine some other properties like maybe Men in Black. Did Men in Black have a movie adaptation?
Men in Black had a movie. They also had a cartoon series.
Yeah.
Then they had a comic based on the cartoon series as well.
Well, Men in Black started out as a comic book.
I know. I'm saying the comic from the cartoon was based on the cartoon version of the movie, which was based on the comic book.
Yeah, so I think you're right because it would be comic, movie, cartoon, and then comic book. So it would kind of like this full circle.
Yeah, exactly. Full circle there.
Yeah. It happens. Is there any benefit to it? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the big, and I've heard this many times, is one of the reasons, like, why don't the Marvel movies translate in the comics? Because the comics are doing their own thing and the movies are doing their own thing. So a lot of people go see the Avengers and like, I want the comic book with the basic Avengers that the one I see in the movies, and it's like an all different team. So it doesn't always translate.
That's like the problem because a lot of times when movies come out, these ongoing storylines are just hard for new people to get into. So even if they are interested after the movie, they get turned off immediately as soon as they see that. Like,
it's like this is not what I want.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think I would argue that the other thing is that for I don't know the last 20 years or so, someone who buys Marvel and DC comics today would have to maybe more address this, but I know they were doing it back in the 90s. It's all these doggone events, right? You can't imagine if you went to a movie. I'm like, hey, I'm really interested in that. I'm going to go to see what this, and then you go, and then they, oh yeah, this is part 7 of a 20-part story. And I'm like, well, I'm not buying that. I just wanted to buy the Avengers,
Yeah, I think there is, and I've heard of. There was a few years ago that I think Marvel did it. Would they try to do an Avengers series separate from the whole kind of Marvel universe that was its own ongoing series with the original team? Kind of almost, it was based off a comic. In other words, trying to get like people who in the comics, like give them a series that is a insular series and not connected to the Marvel universe per se. And I don't think it lasted very long, but they're trying to that way, people can like, oh, I read this like this thing. It was called like Earth's Mightiest Adventures. Maybe it's based off the cartoon or something. And then if they
Oh
like
yeah.
that, then then they can go into the actual proper Marvel Universe Adventures. Proper. Does that kind of make sense? It was like
Yeah.
a series that was
Yeah.
insular from the rest of the Marvel Universe, but still starred the Avengers. And I've
Yeah.
seen people try that before. I'm not sure to what success that is. But I do know that I think people, I mean, and the movies are running into the same thing because a lot of people like the hard thing to break into comics is because there's so much of it. You have to collect so much of it. But I've heard
Right.
people like say like, "Oh, you got to watch the Marvel movies." Like, how many movies? 20? Like, forget that. So the
Well, it's
movies are
just
running into the
TV.
same concept in a way too.
Yep.
Where they're
They
like, I
had a
don't want
TV
to see
series
that.
on top of that, which even complicates it further.
Right. Yeah. Stuff like Hawkeye and WandaVision and
It just, I mean,
Winter
it
Falcon.
just, yeah,
Winter
it's just the
Falcon,
more
Winter
you
Soldier.
grow this, the more, I mean, you have a backlog. The more backlog you make, the less people. Again, it's time.
Well, so here's what I think, right? Now anybody who's talked to me knows that I'm a shooter fan, and for those, if you're out there and you're a shooter hater, please don't hate me. When I say I'm a shooter fan, I look at the comics that came out under Shooter's purview in the 1980s, and I don't know whether he was a tyrant that you read that he was a tyrant in the offices and that kind of thing. I don't know. I wasn't there. The only thing I'm looking at are the comics, and the comics that came out. They came out on time. They were good. They were exciting. They got me interested in all kinds of new comics during then. I was just reading, one or two others, but man, there was a time when I was buying probably most of the Marvel line, and that would have been in the 80s,
Yeah, well, Shooter, that was his prime days, his big days of the 80s.
Yep. And now, and part of that was, now, and this is not just a Shooter thing. This was kind of a Marvel thing, but I know Shooter was very, very big on it. It's like, for the writers, you've got to write every comic as if it is somebody's first issue. So if you pick up Avengers, I know for me, I pick up Avengers number 140. I don't know any of those characters. I might know Captain America, right? But I didn't know who any of those other characters were. So you got to introduce, if you're the writer, you got to introduce me to those characters. Tell me a little something about them. You don't have to go into everything. But if you think about like Wolverine, what if you read Claremont's Wolverine, what do you know about Wolverine?
Well, he's the best he is at what he does. I mean, he does the same thing.
And what he does is very nice, right? I mean, so that was hammered, and that was interesting enough that you knew there was something about Wolverine, right? So you knew that.
Do you think the reason maybe they don't do that today is so many series are 4 issues long? In other words, it's not a huge investment to go back and get the rest of the series if it's 4 issues.
So
I don't know. I'm just guessing. I mean,
as to whether Marvel and DC do that today or not, I don't know, because I don't read Marvel and DC today. So I can't address whether they still do that or whether they don't do that. I don't know. Maybe if somebody's listening can chime in and say they still do that or not. I know independent comics are horrible about it. They're horrible. You can pick up, you find yourself at a show. I know people have heard me before. I buy a lot of, I support Kickstarters, and I buy a lot of stuff at conventions, right? Now I buy a lot of stuff out of the cheap box. Almost all of it independent comics. That's not to say I'd never buy any Marvel or DC out of the cheap box. I do some. But if there's an independent creator there, I'll try out their book a lot of times, and they're often you if you get like a 2 or a 3, you're like, you literally are coming in the middle of the story, and you're like, I have no idea who these characters are. I have no idea what's going on, and if you're a reader, are you going back for that?
I mean, that's like a lot of people first get in want to create this big manifesto, which like, I'm gonna make this big sprawling saga.
Right, yeah.
I actually felt that myself. I was doing my first self-published stuff. Then I got the second series I was doing. Like, screw it, each issue is gonna be self-contained.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, I even consolidated the entire series summary into a 1 page. just so I
Mhm.
have a 1-page catch up in each issue.
Yeah. That's great. I know
Yeah.
my our good pal Barry Gregory, who runs Gallant Comics. If you read John Amon, John Amon was a 6-issue miniseries. You pick up issue 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The very first page is like what happened before, and he just gives I think I'd have to go back and look. I think he pulls panels from the issues, but he just gives a summary. But he has images like, hey, in the last when last we were here, John Amon did this, and then this happened, and now you're all caught up, right? And then
I remember reading a lot of comics like that in the 90s, and I always thought that was a good idea. Because no matter what issue you come into, you at least have something to get your caught up. It's like when watching TV, you have the previously on, segment.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. Yeah. And I think that's a great idea as well.
But yeah, we've talked about. I mean, I know. I think I mentioned movies don't do that. But again, movies are like if you watch Return of the Jedi and its first introduction to Star Wars, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. I think there was one movie,
but it's not a big entry to go back and watch the other 2 movies. Now, I would almost argue, in a way, do the Marvel movies do that, or should they? I mean, if your first introduction to Marvel is like Endgame, good luck with that one.
I remember there was someone. My brother had a friend who never read the Harry Potter series, never saw the movies, and his first introduction was the Part 2 of Deathly Hallows movie.
Oh my gosh!
That was his very first introduction to Harry Potter.
I can't remember if it's Part 2 or Part 1, but my family gets mad at me because I call it Harry Potter's Amazing Camping Adventure.
It is.
Oh my gosh, that's so bad. I'm not a Harry Potter fan, and that episode in particular was the worst piece of junk. Harry Potter's Amazing Camping Adventure.
It was. They kind of took the whole school out of it. And I'm like, wasn't it like a wizarding school or something?
It's a summer vacation, summer camp edition.
Right. Yeah. What happened to band camp, right?
Well, let me ask you this. Would it be cool if any Silverline was adapted into movies or something else? Or could you take or leave it? Could you be like, whatever?
Obviously my very first answer is like, absolutely. Because here's so I was going to go here a while ago, but our conversation went somewhere else. Here's one of the reasons I think they make the movies. Okay, obviously the movie makers see money in it, right? They're not going to make a movie. They're not going to say, yes, we'll do a Fantastic Four movie unless they really think they can make money, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to do it with the intent to lose money. It's just not going to happen. That's not the way they run their businesses, right? Comic books are interested. Marvel's interested because it's like, hey, if they can make a good Fantastic Four movie, and here's where I think the weirdness, catch-22, not a catch-22. I don't know. Y'all help me with the term, but here's where it comes strange. It's like history and data has proven that it doesn't help any. So why is the mentality from Marvel and DC?
I know.
Hey, if we can get them to make a really good Fantastic Four movie, it'll make more people come and buy the comic books.
I still don't understand that either. I don't understand why there's even a push for adaptations when it's proven over it's been decades now that it doesn't improve. And if it does improve, I mean, I would assume Disney probably sells more merchandise like action figures, T-shirts, and whatnot than comics.
I thought it was always that they make movies because it's already an established IP, it's already a universe written and created, so there's less work for them to do in the creative side.
Yeah.
So it's just a little easier shortcut for them to make the movies. And with established IP, it's
yes and no. I think you're right on that. Again, and Roland has talked about this even with the Cat and Mouse. As always, you get those creators or directors that they want to change something because they get like ownership of it or something. Which again completely betrays the fans. Like, I don't want to see that because that's stupid, and so the whole thing and they keep doing this recycling. This is why so why does anime and manga work? Because they're one-to-one creations every other. Literally, anime is the manga in motion.
Well, I mean anime basically acts as an advertisement for the manga.
It is. And if they actually did the comics verbatim 1-for-1, that might work. Not all the time, but it might.
I hold on to this. Whoops.
Oops.
Apparently, I don't hold on to it well.
I have a question.
I have this all these documents that includes obviously this is dated in the early 90s, but this is when Cat and Mouse was optioned by Trilogy, right?
Yeah, I remember.
I hang on to this because this reminds me of how bad it was. This is so bad. What they did to the property is just so I hang on to it because I want to be reminded that if something like this were to ever happen again, I need to make sure that I have some sort of input.
The Stephen King option. We have the ability to basically kill the project whenever you want.
Yeah. I mean, so I think part of it is when you're talking about people going in and making changes so that they can have ownership of it. Mm-hmm. I think part of it is if you look at most of the Marvel movies, the people who made that clearly have an affinity for the characters. They like them.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I would almost argue if you look at the DC movies, they don't like Superman.
I think they just don't know what to do with him. Superman is a character like the Hulk is in Marvel. Well, they kind of just never kind of know what to do with the Hulk. I mean, he's cool, he's there, but they just can't quite figure it out. I don't know why.
It's hard to make a threat for Superman. Well, I guess it depends what version you use of him, but he's more of a reactionary character.
Yeah.
I think that the biggest thing that the studio didn't want to do with Superman was, I mean, so you come up to Christopher Nolan Batman saga, and that just makes bucket loads of money.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, the whole realism thing seems to work. We need to stick with that, the dark gritted realism, because that worked for Nolan, and that'll be our difference from Marvel. Okay, that works in Batman because he's realistic in some capacity, and he has no powers. I mean, but once you put Superman in there, they don't really know what to do with him because he is like the epitome of the Super Friends idea of like the cheesy cartoon. This is why they tried to make Superman relatively dark and like serious. I mean, not only Zack Snyder, but Christopher Nolan was one of the main producers of the whole Zack Snyder universe. And so I think they were just like, okay, well, we know Batman, we get him. What do we do with Superman?
Yeah.
Especially what do we do with Aquaman? I mean, these guys don't fit. How are we going to do this? And so, because I mean, the funny thing is, it is a hard movie. I mean, Batman is Gotham, the world. I mean, even in the comics, Metropolis is light and happy. Gotham is dark and serious. And you mishmash those again. It seems to work in the comics, but for the movies, it's like one's going to suffer. Either Batman's going to be too bright, like the '60s Batman, or Superman's going to be too dark, and they happen to go that way. But that's a weird fine line. And I don't think they really kind of knew what to do. They attempted it. Even when I heard it, I'm like, if you're going to do Christopher Nolan, like, that works in Christopher Nolan's universe, but put Superman and stuff in there. I mean, look what they did with Aquaman. I mean, they finally just made the super bright, happy Aquaman movie. Now throw Batman in that Aquaman movie. That ain't going to work. So it's hard, man. I don't know.
That's the Justice League.
Yeah, I don't know. The one thing Marvel did is they set their tone from the beginning. The problem DC had is they already had movies, Superman movies and Batman movies. Previously, they had two-tone set. They had Christopher Reeves, Superman, and they had the Christopher Nolan, Tim Burton's Batman. You got to mix those. Marvel was like, well, we ain't got nothing. We're just, woohoo, we start from the beginning. So that was their advantage, I think. And DC was playing like catch.
But I think the Christopher Reeves Superman is beloved.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I grew up with it. Just like you did,
Why would you try to change that so drastically that it's unrecognizable?
I think because the backlash from Superman Returns.
I can see that. Superman did get it, but I mean, it was just a technically bad. It was not a very good.
It did well. It actually did well, and he was a good Superman. Just the script
I thought he was.
So it was like the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. He actually is a good actor in that. Problem is the script kind of
right.
Yeah,
and that's how the Superman Returns as well. Good actor, sort of a script.
Right. Yeah.
But then after that, he went on to the Nolan trilogy, and I said, "Oh, this has better reception than the previous Superman one. Let's stick with this type of tone."
Oh,
Yeah.
Cassisi, this can't be a serious question. Cassisi says, "Who loved the Christopher Reeve Superman, though?" I mean, everybody,
The original
right?
ones, yeah, the original, like the first two,
Yeah,
and the first two were written to be one movie. I mean, the third one's and that were kind of like, but I mean, Donna wrote the first two. I mean, you can see him setting up the second one in the first movie. I mean, the very
yes.
beginning scene of the first movie is the Kryptonians being flung into space, and then of course that goes into two. So he was setting them up. You know, I don't know. I mean, there could be, because he says the fresh take on the characters.
Yeah, he says, "I think enough years have had passed to have a fresh take on the character."
I can see that. Superman's just kind of like, he's more of this icon, this general sort of template for superheroes. So I think that's one of the things that sometimes kind of hurts him. Is anybody thinks superheroes, like, oh, you think of Superman.
Yeah.
And so if you try to do anything different with the guy,
Well, you can always go with
like
they
that.
do have some good what if stories, the Elseworld stuff with Superman that do deviate from that. I think since DC Warner seems to be really going after those alternate, single standalone movies, maybe a good idea to adapt one of the Elseworld Superman ones.
Yeah. Cassisi says, "I'm not saying that he isn't loved. I'm asking us to consider that many years had passed."
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get that. I think that
What's the one? Red Dawn?
It's a hard question to answer because we grew up with this. So I mean, this is like when you see a lot of young kids, like, oh, you grew up in the 80s, 80s stuff. And but even when they take, like a lot of the 80s properties they take now and make movies of are like comedies. Like, look how many, even the sitcom, not sitcoms, but like, they made 21 Jump Street, and that was a comedy. So yeah,
well, I think that obviously society and technology has changed.
Yeah,
and will continue to change. Obviously, when Superman, when Christopher Reeve Superman was done, the idea of cell phones, of actually looking at people, that was Dick Tracy technology.
Yeah,
that was something that didn't, but it's a reality now, and
it's super common.
Yeah, I mean, more common than not. He goes on, the attitude of a superhero may be viewed differently by a younger generation. The anti-hero is seriously on the rise. I would say the anti-hero has been on the rise since the late 1980s. So I don't think that's fair to say it's on the rise now, because I think that if you look at the Punisher, Dark Knight Returns, Wolverine, those all kind of gave birth to that grim and gritty late 80s, early. They gave birth to the Image Age,
Yeah. Even though Wolverine was made on a joke. I remember it's like a dare or a joke he was made.
I mean, even probably like the Turtles have, anti-hero to an extent for Raphael.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I remember all the what I heard, the creation of Wolverine made it was something like, they just said, like, you should make a Canadian character, and I love all you Canadians out there, like Canadian character that would sell. And he's like, okay, and so they made Wolverine, made him Canadian. And it was like some sort of like pitch or
well,
that kind of
and then
it's really funny we consider they wanted to make him get rid of his Canadian origins in the movies. Actually,
yeah.
Well, and then of course the Alpha Flight had the Guardian.
Yeah.
Which I liked. I liked the character a lot.
I liked that. I thought it was cool. I liked a lot of those. I think the anti-hero has maybe, I think there's always that anti-hero because I think there's always a younger generation that has that sort of anti-authority built.
Well, and Cassisi says that. Let me rephrase: the anti-hero has more of a spotlight. And I wouldn't disagree with that. And I would say that the anti-heroes had the spotlight since then. And I would my guess is going to be it's a reflection of society, because comics have ever since the beginning, comics have always kind of reflected that. That said, I don't think you take Superman and make him an anti-hero. I
don't think that.
I think
just
Superman.
want to make one argument case. The Elseworld story, Red Sun, which is really well done and does make Superman a kind of villainous type character in there.
Yeah, but that's a make-believe story.
I know that. My point is, you can't make Superman, not a good character and still work. I should have read the word that wrong. Otherwise, you can still make Superman not the. I know what I'm trying to say there.
Well, see,
now.
the reason I like the Zack Snyder Superman, I know a lot of people don't, is because I kind of felt like he had all of this power, and yet he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I thought that was an interesting take where he would try to do help, and then there were all these political matters, like certain nations, like your guy Superman can't come in and mess with our nation. This is diplomatic concerns, and I'm like, well, that's an interesting take because if a guy could do anything, say he did something in Russia, like would America have a response to that since he's from America? I mean, so it's almost like this weird sort of like, and I think building this sort of real type world they were trying to do Zack Snyder a little bit. I think it was an interesting because how do you defeat a man who can't be defeated? Well, you make him a little unsure of himself as he's trying to
Mm.
figure things out.
Well,
And so I think that was an interesting take on that character.
and of course, I think this goes back to kind of my
Yeah.
my problem with Superman is that he has become too powerful. I
I think he
love
has to.
I love the original Superman. I am a big fan of the way Superman was created in the 1940s. He wasn't he couldn't, fly around the world and make it spin backwards.
No.
He didn't have that kind of power.
The Max Fleischer
And
cartoons, which me and you both love, I think showed a good deal
yes.
of that sort of, even though he could do amazing things, there was still an effort of striving in those cartoons to do it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And that is where, and I think part of the problem for Superman is that or within there's concern. Oh no, he could get hurt. You watch Superman today, and I'm like, I'm not really concerned that Superman's going to get hurt. Yes, everyone tends to show up with some kryptonite. I don't know how they got it, but
I know.
The rarest substance on Earth.
yeah, and that's part of the problem with it is everyone shows up with kryptonite. But okay, well, whatever.
Well, the problem is he's so powerful, like you said, that there's two ways you can afflict that character. Then, and you either afflict them with kryptonite or you afflict them emotionally. He can't be everywhere at once. He's unsure of himself. He's overconfident. That's how you cause problems with that character's his attitude or viewpoint. But like you said, that kind of goes
Mhm.
against the original idea of Superman. He's just the Boy
Yeah.
Scout who does good things.
Well,
So
but also,
again, you make him so invincible. How do you write a story where you feel the stakes are against him? You have to hit him emotionally, and that doesn't always work with the Superman we like. I did like the one that he couldn't be everywhere at once. Well, that was Richard Donner's take. Like
now,
he was so busy saving the dam, he didn't save Lois Lane. Like he
remember,
couldn't
there's
be
also
everywhere at once.
there is an Elseworld story as well, where he, basically his Lois and everyone gets killed,
Mhm.
and then he basically loses it and goes to this authoritarian dictatorship to basically policing the world.
Oh, that's that's actually based off the
I don't remember the comic name. I know
Mortal
about
Kombat
it.
made a video game at DC,
Yes.
like
Injustice, right?
Magic.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was DC, and then Magic.
Yeah.
Yes, Magic does hurt him. That's why I forgot. Which
Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah, and then Jesse does become authoritative. Superman, I think to me, I would be like if people ask me like what character you like to write. I think he would be an interesting character to tackle because you really have to come at it from a pretty creative angle to get some unique ideas. I think there's still stuff there to mine with that character, but you really have to be creative about it. I think I like a
So-
challenge. Writing him would be a challenge.
So let's go back to let's see if I can pull it back up here. So Cassisi said the attitude of a superhero may be viewed differently by a younger generation.
Yeah.
So I guess let me ask. So when we're talking about adaptations and things like this, so should you take that into consideration, or should you, if you're doing the adaptation, should you say, okay, here's how Superman is. However, the younger generation has different attitudes than generations when Superman was created, or even 40 years after Superman was created.
Well, yeah, that should be taken into consideration. I mean, a perfect example of that is a Miles, the Spider-Man. He was a breakout success, and the movie improved on the comic. The comic itself didn't do a good representation, but the movie really went deeper into that, and they did take into account the modern times and the younger generation with that movie, and it did much better.
That's yeah, and but I see. I kind of I see what Roland's saying, because it's like you could, and I think these are more the money makers behind the movie, going like, we got to do what's cool and we got to cater to it. But if you cater to an audience, do you destroy the character? I mean, I'm a big fan of Judge Dredd. If you made a Judge Dredd movie today, looking on the idea of the anti-hero meaning he's more fighting against the establishment, like the government and the establishment, and fighting for the small guy, like Robin Hood sort of character, that would totally destroy Judge Dredd's character. It would just totally destroy it. He's authoritarian. Superman is for peace and justice and the the American way, which I think I've heard they've gotten rid of that.
They got rid of that, yeah.
Rid of that, and that says it right there. Superheroes today are fighting against the status quo or the government, when before, like us, superheroes are part of, like, help defending, like, the nation state. Superman was there to kind of defend the nation state from criminals and do-gooders that would hurt the state. Now I think it's a different viewpoint, and I think that's what Cassisi's getting at. And there is something to that.
I just want to make it clear, they did not get rid of his model. They just changed it slightly, and they basically just have him say now truth, justice, and a better tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now, personally, I think it should say truth, justice, and for a better tomorrow. This make it a little better, but I think it's still the same type of feelings behind that message. He's still saying for peace and unity across the world. Just before, it seemed more centered on America, which does seem a little self-centered, to be honest. So to try to include everyone now, that does make it better, and I do think that is a good,
Well, yeah, I mean, true. I mean, I think even Roland would agree to this. Superman was made very much in a time of patriotism with the 40s, 30s.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That type of situation, it's good to update it because they updated keeping that in mind.
I hear what you're saying, but let me play devil's advocate here. And Aaron, you mentioned it. Robin Hood. Why don't we just change Robin Hood? Because those times have changed since Robin Hood was created.
Right.
What about?
Well, Robin Hood makes sense because, again, right now the whole idea is that the rich are getting more wealthy, but the poor isn't, and they're actually making money off the poor. And Robin Hood would make sense this time because he's basically giving back to the people who are suffering.
Okay, so you're making an argument though that doesn't change the initial concept.
Yes, I'm saying it's really a case by case basis. I think, that the underlying story for Robin Hood, for example, would work in today. You'd have to change maybe a little bit to make it more modern because obviously a guy can't run around sneaking around with all the cameras and everything. But the whole idea.
But I think it is a sort of, you're writing characters based on certain sections of history of time. I mean, and I think these characters, the longer they exist, do represent certain factions of time. I mean, you can see why Captain America is made. You can see why Superman's made. Robin Hood was made in a time where, the rich are getting richer like today and the poor are getting poor. I mean, those are times of revolution, American Revolution, the French Revolution. Not saying Robin Hood was written during those times per se. I think he was written earlier. But the idea of, like, the poor had no open mobility, the rich are getting richer, and those things fluctuate. And you have characters creating all the time. So you have characters being created in certain parts of history where either like even communists, communism trying to put the power, power into the people's hand, and then you have people in the government's hand, and these things keep flipping and characters keep getting made. Like Roland said, should you update those characters to modern times, even though those characters are made to reflect the times they were made in?
Well, I was going to say, you have a good.
If you're making a movie or series based on a specific time period, then I think to stay in that time period. But if you are writing to write a Robin Hood story based now, the whatever 1800s, whatever, then yes, keep it the same. But if you're doing it for today's modern world, like Big Robin Hood 2020, then it should reflect that 2020 world. That's what I'm saying. It should really be a case by case basis based on the time period the movie or series is set in, and based around that.
Yeah, and that's where I was actually going to go. Does that make any? Would that make any difference? Because CC's running wild here with some comments. He says, I think it depends on if you're trying to make a character who lasts through time or a character to make a profit, which only has relevance now. Yeah. Which, of course, we might say, are you trying to write literature or are you trying to write entertainment?
Yeah.
Right. And for those of you who want to make the argument that Shakespeare was writing literature, no, he wasn't. He was writing entertainment. It just happens to be he was really, really good.
He's writing stuff for an audience. For
there's really no way to
play an audience.
No one knows what the future is. So writing a character who will be, perfect throughout time going forward is really not feasible, because you might think, okay, this is a perfect character. It's a character that will last the test of time. 100 years in the future, there might be some different thought process for people then.
Yeah.
You think, oh no, this character's outdated. He doesn't apply to us anymore.
I would love for them that they made a Superman movie make a Superman movie in the 40s,
Set in the
or
40s.
something like Time Flesher, like in the
Yeah.
time period. I think that would work, and it would be like, oh yeah, but that was attitude during those times. I guess because they did have Captain America. I mean, they always started in World War II,
Yeah.
so you initially set this guy's attitude and worldview, and then you bring him to the future, and then that worldview clashes.
Right. Yeah.
Superman.
And they did the
is
same
always
thing with Wonder
updated.
Woman.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I thought was nice.
Yeah.
I could have sworn, didn't they have one of the infinite crossovers in DC? Didn't they at one point actually bring the characters from those time periods to the present? I could have sworn there was a crossover of that at one point.
Oh, you mean with like the Wonder Woman of like the old meets the Wonder Woman of today?
Yeah.
I know in the comics, when I read Wonder Woman, there's been a few stories. I don't know if it's canon, that her mom Hippolyta was Wonder Woman for a time during World War II and One, and that the modern Wonder Woman, of course, is her daughter. So you have those two meet sometimes. There were times when her mother came in and donned the mantle Wonder Woman and fought, and then she eventually retreated to Paradise Island, and her daughter took over, which I thought was kind of an interesting take. So.
Because he then answers his own question here. He says both are valid goals, but they change the approach of how you present a character.
Yeah.
I
think Roland is right. I think they do write characters for profit, and I think I'm not so much of a fan of updating certain characters. I think that sometimes, Marvel did this with the Ultimate line. The whole world was updated.
I would say you tell me what character you think was written to last through time and not for profit. And I would tell you, and I would probably tell you you're wrong.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that to be a case. Let's see here. Let's see. The next thing he says, do you focus on the audience that grew with the character, or are you trying to get folks to like it? And I think that's probably the key point of adaptations. Yeah. Are you trying to focus? So what people forget is comics is a very small industry. Even when it's doing super great, it's still a small industry, right? Because you think we measure, well, today we measure them in the hundreds and the thousands, but even during the heydays of the 80s, they were only measured in the hundreds of thousands, right? Yeah. Spider-Man at regularly selling 250 to 350,000 copies. We're talking 250 to 350,000 copies. Now, I know we sit here and think today, man, I wish I could sell that many copies. In the grand scheme of entertainment, that's chump change.
Yeah. Especially even if you went good, like say like book sales, which if we're staying in the printed realm, books outsell comics tons. And you're just talking the book industry and if you think of comics as a portion of the book industry, it's a portion of it, unless you think of comics as its own separate industry entity, and then the books. But books still, somebody asked me, and it was funny, somebody posted like the other day, like, what's the best-selling book of all time? And everybody just answered like, well, duh, that's the Bible.
Yeah.
So it's like no one's going to top that.
Yeah.
So that's not
even around for a long time.
It's been a long time.
It stands the test of time when it comes to audiences, right?
Yeah. So even books sell more. If a comic book can get on the New York Times bestsellers list, come on. I think Watchman has actually been on there at one point or another.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think it's a little easier to do today, but simply because people are, they're not reading like they once did.
Yeah.
But, let's see what else CC said here. He goes, they have changed Robin Hood. I'm not aware of any changes that they've made. I know I saw parts of a movie recently that flopped, and so I don't know if that's one of them, but correct me if I'm wrong, Robin Hood is always steal from the rich, give to the poor.
I'm trying to think of
because of the sheriff of the Nottingham, the oppressive government, and so I don't know that that's ever changed. If it has,
they changed the setting. Like him, I think it's one of him in space. There's one with him, with.
Okay, but if the core concept is still the same, you can change it anywhere.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah. And he said even the idea of King Arthur has changed. And again, I I'm not aware of it. King Arthur is tied to Excalibur.
I have seen plenty. Actually, I've seen a number of stories where King Arthur is the villain, and they have to use the sword to destroy him.
They had
I've
to
seen a
use. Oh yeah.
I think it's more Manga that does that actually, but
Yeah. I mean, again, these are, and you get into the realm of myth, which I would argue King Arthur is going into the realm of myth, a little bit. That the initial myth you can do plays on it, but the initial myth I think is pretty solid, not to be changed.
man,
Yeah, DC says it is Manga that changes it.
Yeah.
But
But then again, it's funny because you see American interpretations of Japanese stuff, and they're like, no, that's not right. So it's, it goes both ways. Yeah.
Well, so I'm going to circle back to the question that you asked that I avoided earlier. You asked, what about Silverline stuff? If someone came up to say, would you do something with Silverline stuff? And my immediate response would be probably. Right?
Roland, can I post something to you too?
Sure.
Not movies, but they actually are audiobooks of the comics. There are audiobooks out there for graphic novels. Like I actually have some for some some DC storylines. Well, to have the full cast doing all the characters from the comic. They have someone playing the narrator, take you through and explain everything. So basically, they turn the comic into a dramatization. Can't pronounce that. So, would you be open to something like that?
I don't guess I know what you're talking about. I've never heard of that. So an audiobook? How you spell that?
Audiobook. Audiobook.
Audiobook.
Oh,
okay, yeah.
Absolutely. I would be up to that. Yeah. And in fact, we
attempted that here.
We did. Well,
like,
no,
was it
not that. That was fun, but that was goofy. Yeah. No, we actually had that on one of our Kickstarters. Oh. We were going to, if we could, we didn't make it, right? But that was one of our goals, that if we could reach a certain goal, we were going to, I had talked to somebody at the time, and I'd have to go back and look now, who had said, hey, we could take your, we could get some actors and take your comic and turn it into an audiobook. So the answer to that is absolutely. I would love that. I am a huge fan. I don't know if you guys remember these at all. Did you ever see any of the, Power Records presents Captain America, and Jeremy's got them. Jeremy's like, I've got those.
I remember
I knew the minute he got up, he had them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No.
Perfect. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be great. I think that if you could get a little actors ensemble that could to work on the voices and get some sound effects, man, I think that would be cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think it's funny. People ask me, "Would you want your stuff to be adapted into something else?" I don't know. I don't really think there's a huge drive for me to have anything of mine adapted, like Godlings on my kids' books. I can see adapted in the cartoons. My Godlings, like, no, I kind of like it the way it is.
Well, you would have to ask yourself, I think, one of two questions, right? And you guys correct me if you think there's more questions to ask. But I think the question is, do you want to make money, or do you want it to be a fairly accurate representation of what you have presented, right?
For my Godlings book, it would be a pretty fairly accurate representation because the story is so integral. Now, my kids' books, no, they could change. They could do all sorts of things because it's just a core concept idea, and they're pretty open-ended. Yeah. But my comic book, that one. Now, do I have any other comic book ideas that I had in mind that I can there's a few I have in mind that I can see people doing their own thing with them. But Godlings is personal. And I don't plan sequels. I don't want to do anything else, and not changing it. This is kind of like if somebody, when they adapted Watchmen. I mean, it's like, look, you either adapt Watchmen as Watchmen, or you don't. And even though they made the one small change at the end, which I actually like the small change at the end of the movie, I think it fits the movie. No, whether it fits the comic, I don't know. And the only reason I think it fits the movie is I don't know. It kind of made sense. Okay, there was a very small change. It kind of made sense. I get it. But if you just tried to adapt Watchmen as like your own interpretation, it would have fell apart.
Yeah.
So I think there are some and I think this has to do with more singular books. If you have like an idea like Superman or Batman that does multiple stories stuff throughout history, you're more apt to do your own interpretation of it. And nobody really cares. But if
Yeah.
you're adapting a specific book, and this goes with books too. I mean, when they adapt actual books in the movies, they have to be relatively kind of on point a little bit.
Yeah. Jeremy, you were going to say?
Oh no, I was thinking of the Lord of the Rings movies and the
Mhm.
Amazon TV series. There's this big drastic change between the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, and then the new Power Rings they're coming out with on Amazon.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like they're really deviating from the source there for the Amazon series.
Yeah.
And then the Hobbit also they did something similar. Meanwhile, the Lord of the Rings one's the one people really love. I mean, it didn't follow verbatim, but it was much closer than what the other stuff they did, and that's the one people really remember.
Yeah.
The thing is the Lord of the Rings, a lot of these old stories are not built to be franchises. What they're trying to build them into, they're just not. There is one story, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are certain things that they like the old properties that have built into audience. They'll make a franchise out of that. Like, yeah, those things aren't built to be franchises. Once you start getting away from the source material, your franchise falls apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see this a little bit with Star Wars. Once you start getting away a little bit, but not much, but you start getting a little bit away from it, it's like, people get more finicky.
Well, so I asked that question because I think that if you're in it just for the money, then I think that you are able to turn it loose and just say, "Yep, give me the money, go do what you want to do," right? And you don't care,
Right?
And I would argue that's a legit stance. If you told me that's what you wanted to do, then great. That I don't see any problem with that.
No.
But I think if you're like, I want it to be, my perfect vision of what I've envisioned, and then I think the money might be the big question because I'm not sure. I'm not sure, unless of course you're a big name like Stephen King or something like that, right? But I'm not sure that someone would be willing to pay you money because of all the things we talked about earlier. They want to make changes, they want to put their name on it, and I'm not sure they would be willing to pay you the money, the equal money, and still be perfectly true to your vision, if that makes sense.
And I think every writer, you included, has certain stories probably that you've written that you're like, no, if this is adapted, it's verbatim. And you have other ones like, no, do whatever you want, go for it. Even I have those. I have stories that, if somebody wanted to make changes to, I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm not too married to it. It was just an idea. But there's certain stories like an emotional investment or something I'm trying to say where I'm like, no, this really kind of has to fall in place for the message to be seen. If you change the story, you change the message, you kind of change it. I think every writer has those stories. Ones that they hold close to their heart and ones that are like, no, man, I'll toss it out there for a chunk of change.
That falls in this bugs without a lot of the movie adaptations is they'll change it so much. At that point, you're questioning, well, why didn't you make your own movie, your own characters then? And then you fall into a similar trap. I think one of the good examples for a reason why they don't, or the thinking is the Asimov adaptation of I, Robot. The movie they had, the storyline they had, they didn't have enough confidence in. But hey, we got the rights to Asimov's book. He has a built-in audience with name recognition. Let's throw that name on here. Has nothing to do with the movie, but the name will draw them in.
Strange enough, they did that with the Joker movie.
And that's true. It drew me in. And when I left that movie, I was pissed off because I'm like, this is not iRobot. Because so iRobot, the robot novels are some of my favorite novels. I absolutely love Asimov's robot novels. Okay. And now don't take this as me hating Will Smith or anything like that. I like Will Smith. In fact, we watched the wife and I watched King Richard today. Good movie.
Yeah.
So don't misinterpret what I'm saying. It's just it's same would be for Starship Troopers, right? I like Starship Troopers a lot, but I went to see that movie, and when I left that movie, I went, that was the biggest piece of crap I've ever seen because it wasn't Starship Troopers.
Yeah. I saw the movie first, I read the book later, and even after reading the book, I liked the book, but I can't even see how you'd interpret that as a movie. It would be a boring movie. I mean, it's
Well,
a good book, but man, I'm not sure. That's one. There's so
it's like
much
Foundation, the
political.
Foundation series, doing the same thing. The
I
source
haven't seen
material.
that.
Let's just say it's completely. The Foundation series is it's a good series, but it could be a little drawn out, boring.
Yeah.
Like he's saying.
So
But
have
what
you
they
read
did was,
Foundation?
I read some of the short stories leading into it. My father was the one who really read the series, so I'm getting all the information from him. And
Okay.
he's not happy so far.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was kind of, and see, I've not talked to anybody who's seen it, who's read the book. So that
That's
was
what they're
kind of,
making a TV series.
yeah. See,
on
look,
that, aren't
Cassisi
they?
says it too. Starship Troopers was an amazing book.
I can see it making. I don't know. Maybe it make a great
and
movie.
I
mean,
agree with him. I think it would have made a great movie, but it's not the movie we got. Now, I will say this, okay. After a few years, I went back and watched that movie again, not 100% by choice, but I went back and watched the movie again. But I went into it knowing this is not my Starship Troopers.
No, it's
And
not.
it wasn't a bad sci-fi movie. It
It's
wasn't Starship
not.
Troopers, but it wasn't a bad one, you know?
It's got that same sort of. It had almost kind of the same attitude where it kind of questioned, is this the future you want?
Yeah.
Heinlein was more like, no, this is the future. This type of future would work. That movie's going like, this is kind of future you want. That's why I say, do you want to know more? I'm like, do you really want to know more about this authoritarian future? So it did kind of put that in, but it was much more of a straight up war movie. I mean, yeah.
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 Cece said the problem with Starship Troopers movie was that it was a different movie that they adapted to fit Starship Troopers. Yeah, I would almost argue that they wrote this science fiction movie, and then they said nobody's going to come see our science fiction movie. What can we do? Oh, we can get the rights to Heinlein's Starship Troopers. Let's do that. It's close enough. We're fighting big bugs. And,
well, I know the director read the book and just said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do, and
well, see, and that's a problem I have. It's like, if you don't want to do it, don't do it.
Then give it another name.
I just want to. I have my own opinions, but I see what your opinions are on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. What will your opinions be on that?
So,
have you read the book? Have you read the book?
I have not read the book. No.
Okay, never mind. Trust me, it's very different. There would be no way to really film that and make it entertaining.
It's funny because I just reread The Crow again, the original comic, which I'd read years ago, and I bought it and reread it. The movie, they added some Hollywood stuff. I mean, obviously, the movie, the end where they fight the big drug lord, and that was never in it. I'd say the book is much more powerful than the movie.
Yeah.
But if they did a verbatim of the book, would it work as a movie? It'd be a cult classic. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, and that's one of these things. I gotta put Hyper Potatoes message up here. He goes, I'm stressing watching it count down. Glad I took my blood pressure meds. We've been holding right there at 2750.
Okay, so remember been changing it at the 5-minute mark. Remember to just switch back and forth for rolling there.
Yeah. Oh, please don't do that. But I think that's part of what we always have to take into consideration is that there are things that the format can do better than one of the others. Like anybody who's talked to me knows that I'm a huge believer in the comic book format. I believe that we can do things that the other formats can't do. But I'm also a realist that knows, okay, there are some things the movie adaptation has to do or take into consideration for a comic book.
Yeah.
Again, because the comic books do things that movies can't do. So when you do that in a comic and you end up having an adaptation, well, how do they do that? Well, they have to do the best they possibly can, and that's not always going to work.
Yeah, there's a lot, especially the one thing that comics have that kind of goes a little bit with books is like, especially when I read The Crow. I mean, I forgot that a lot of The Crow was separated into individual sort of like short comics, like 5 or 6 page comics, or short comics that he collected together. And a lot of times you go back and tell the back history, and then he would intersperse poetry into it and stuff. I mean, no one's going to like stop a movie halfway through and like, let's read a poem. I mean,
right.
So, I mean, this is what they had problems with Watchmen, because he would put, like news articles and stuff in there talking about stuff. So there are things that comics can't do. Movies have to have that, you start in that full forward momentum to keep going forward. So a lot of movies that have, They go through and they have like, I mean, if they took a 20-minute scene out of the Crow to do his entire backstory of what happened about to the hour mark, people would be like, what up? I mean, even when they do flashbacks in movies, are very short, but I mean, that whole scene in the book is pretty long, lengthy, and it's very intense. So,
if I can give an example as well, going back to the Who Framed Roger Rabbit one, or Who Censored Roger Rabbit, the original book, Censored Roger Rabbit, is based around comic strips. The whole thing basically is so you can't. That's a different medium. So we go to movies. You do need something that can move, which in turn is animation. Now, what gets a little more interesting is Disney had that Saturday morning cartoon Bonkers, which started as idea as the whole Toontown police thing. And the problem with that series is you have the cartoon character with the human characters, but the human characters are also cartoons, but they're supposed to represent real life people. So there's no way to really properly present that in a cartoon format, really, because even in the series, you see the human characters getting hurt, but some of them would get badly hurt. But at the same time, they do recover. It's not something that would kill them. In real life, it would have.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things too, when you talk about adaptations, one of the things is one of the things I like about comics is that, and we don't see it as much anymore because thought balloons have become a little passé. And I'm not sure why. I even talk about this in my class. I'm not really sure why thought balloons have become passé, because it is a strength of comics that no other medium can do. You can put three people, right? Three characters in one panel, and you can give each of them a thought balloon, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
People nowadays prefer the narration box and just color code it. That's usually
I get it. I'm not willing to buy that it's just a look thing. Oh, I just prefer the captured boxes. Maybe you might be right. I don't know, but
I think it's funny that and you're still giving some sound effects only in that one book. It was just that one book I didn't want to put them in. Other books I don't care about.
Yeah, but it's fun. Fun giving you a hard time about it.
But thought balloons, I did find why I can't quite figure out why they went out of vogue. I'm not sure either. Because literally, it's just. I mean, could you think of is it just because of the shape of the balloon? Because beyond that, I got nothing, man.
I mean, and the thing about it is, like anything, though, I agree that they can be overdone. But it's something that comics can do. You can't do that in a film. You can't put three people. I mean, not in it makes sense for a film. It would become. It would become almost parody at that point in time. If you have Airplane, right? Airplane did it. Gee, he never jinxed two cups of coffee at home. I mean, that was funny. It was parody, but you couldn't put that you could put that in any comic book, whether it's comedy or humor. I mean, same thing. Superhero, science fiction, fantasy, comedy, romance, right? Yeah. You could put in any of those and it works. You can't do that in a film, right?
Scott Pilgrim.
Well, strangely enough, they animate. Oh, go ahead.
Let's say the Scott Pilgrim movie also had that, but that's based on a comic.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The Dark Knight Rises, the old Frank Miller comic, they did a 2-part animated movie, or now it's I think 1 part, so 4-hour animated movie. It's pretty faithful, straight. The one thing they took out of it was his narration. Out of the movie, they took out and did it change it? And I'm like, yeah, there were certain scenes where I expect certain narration, and they said they tried it and didn't work. And I'm like, I don't know. I would argue that do it anyways.
Yeah.
Because that narration was going on in his head. Does it change the tone of the movie? I feel it does. I still enjoy the movie, but I'd rather read the book.
And so you can't do that in a novel either, right? You can't take that, and people say, oh yeah, you can have different points of view. You absolutely can have different points of view in a novel,
but it can be confusing very fast.
But you can't put them boom 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 like that, right? Because that's as you just said, it's confusing. What you have to do is you have to give one character's point of view, give a little space break, and another character's point of view, and give a space break, and then another character's point of view, right? You can absolutely do that. All right, we'll stop here for a second and watch the countdown. Hyper Potato says 1 minute. All right, so here we are counting down. Gonna give it well, that's as full screen as it'll go. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Oh, it's skipping every other number on there. 3, 1. Woo! All right. I hope
We did it.
Tim is watching. There we go. Did you see all the firecrackers there? Nice. And there we go. All right, 77 backers pledged $27.50 to bring this project to life. So thank you all so very much for. Whoa, let's see. I think I like this other way. Look how big Aaron looks there. That's good. Thank you all for your support in getting us there. Kasisi says, "Woot!" Hyper Potato says, "Congratulations, everyone." Thank you, Kasisi. Thank you, Hyper Potato. We appreciate you guys. Appreciate you supporting us and cheering us on, allowing us to do this thing that we like to do so much. So I know you hear it and see it in the books, but we really couldn't do this without you guys' support. So please know that I'm touching my heart here saying thank you so much. Okay, let's see. I can remove that there. Not add to stream or stop screen. Okay, there we go. So yeah, let's see. What were we talking about? Thought balloons.
Yeah, the way they got rid of them.
Yeah,
I will say when I was way back when I was in college, one of the comic script writing classes I took, a good chunk of the class, the professor actually asked us who here, uses or likes thought balloons. Half the class just did not like them, and the going sense is just that either it looked cheesy, outdated, or just like too, I guess, old fashioned as most half the class thought.
Huh. That's interesting. Old fashioned. I've heard that a time or two myself. I the thing about it is I don't see any, if you read it all, right? I can't tell you how many books I pick up. Are you guys still there?
Yeah, we should.
Oh, okay. Woo, everything froze on my screen for a minute there. It's like even me, I froze. Everything froze. So the thing about it is, if you read any number of books today, there's a good chance, probably more than a 50% chance, and I don't have any stats behind me. Maybe one of these guys can help me out. More than 50% chance that it's going to be written in first person, right? Which is the interior, right? The interiority of the character. You're getting all of their thoughts and feelings and emotions. That's all thought balloons are. That's literally all they are.
Yeah.
Right. So how can you call that old fashioned when they still do it today, right? In other mediums, right?
I mean, there's one book series I'm reading where you're basically stuck with this one character for 3-4 volumes, and it's just her and no one else. So the entire first 4 volumes are just narration. And the whole point also is you see her, since she's isolated, she's kind of going a little, losing a bit.
Yeah. It's a good question from Kasisi. Do you think that people have considered them a handicap, i.e. they think the art or the dialogue should relate the thought? I think there's some. What do you guys think? I'll let you guys answer this one first.
I think, strangely enough, and I could be wrong on this, a little bit of why people don't like thought balloons, or I can see people arguing against them, is show versus tell, which is dumb as enough. In other words, if you're telling somebody stops, or if they're talking about, well, I think this, and this, that, does it go more into the telling the reader instead of showing the reader? And so by getting rid of thought balloons, you're showing the reader more. That's the only argument I can feel against them. But still,
and I would say poorly written thought balloons do have that problem.
But I do think good written. I mean, like if Batman's hiding behind some corner and he's thinking to himself different ways he could take this assailant out, or which he did in the Dark Knight. I mean, I'm like, that's cool, and that works because you're seeing his train of thought going into the action. I don't think they should be taken out. I think they should be used wisely. I mean, could there be a crux? I mean, Claremont. I mean, I love Claremont, but he was a classic at and I don't know if he'd use stop balloons. I just think he would have Storm talking about how she's going to isolate the atoms to freeze them in a certain way or whatever, and I'm just like, which explains it, but again, that wasn't so much telling us him just giving an idea what she's doing.
Well,
Because how would you show that?
Go
How
ahead,
would you
Danny.
show that in a comic? I mean, you'd have to.
I mean, I like
So.
for the word balloons. My preferred way of seeing them is when they give you an alternate viewpoint from the character they normally would not be able to, see or know about.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they'll say, like they'll say one thing, then they'll think in the other thing, and then that sort of raises a
Yeah.
flag that say I have to pay attention to this.
Yeah. And one of the things, a perfect example of this, Spider-Man versus Superman, right? The great big Treasury edition.
Yeah.
Spider-Man and Superman have this great big fight, and oddly enough, Spider-Man is blasted with a kryptonite ray, right? And so that's how he's able to fight Superman for a while, but that wears off, and then they shake hands, right? And literally they say, I think Superman says shake, and Spider-Man says let's. And then the next panel has him holding his hand behind his back, and it's it's got the motion lines coming off like it really hurt him. And in his thought balloon, he says, "And let's not until I get and let's not do that again until I get a steel titanium hand."
Yeah, which is
Right?
funny, and that makes sense. But
It
if
is
you
funny.
said that, it wouldn't have. You couldn't say that.
No, you can't say that aloud, right? I mean,
Yeah.
well, I guess you could. Here we go. Hyper Potato says, "I love thought balloons. I love text on covers. Heroes fighting. Text telling me that if I buy only one comic this month, this is it." So Hyper Potato, you're gonna like this. I have been talking with one of the artists, and we've been swapping emails, and I think that I don't hardly ever see text on covers anymore, and I like them too. And I think in this day and age, that's going to make us stand out. So you're going to see a movement towards text on Silverline covers, because I think that's part of what you can get a good image, but if you could put a clever 1 or 2 line balloon or something like that on the cover, that's just extra hook.
Like a catchphrase or something.
Yeah.
Maybe
Just it's a hook. So one of the things Denny O'Neil talks about in the DC Comics, the DC Comics Guide to Writing Comics, is about the hook. You gotta hook the reader early on.
Yeah.
And I think that we've seen so many splash page covers, pinup covers, that they don't really. I mean, do they really do it for anybody anymore?
Not really.
No.
And
mean,
my
you could
biggest
say they
problem
look
with comic
good, but
covers is how little they have to do with what's happening in the story. That which drives me nuts.
I prefer that because you'll sometimes get the inside splash cover, but then spoils halfway through the story. And so between the two, I'd rather have something that's irrelevant.
Yeah, I like this. Jeff Potts says text is good for reading and spelling.
It is.
Listen, I learned, you've all heard the story before, but I learned to reading comics, and there's all kind of words I learned from comic books. I would learn something and I would go ask my mom, "Hey mom, what does this word mean?" And she would say, "There's a dictionary."
Okay, so next comic on the cover, just put the page of the dictionary and make it like an ongoing, each issue going forward have a different page.
Yeah, we'd have to get Webster's permission to do that, right? Hyper Potato says, "I think text on covers not only makes a book stand out now, but it's instant nostalgia for buyers who grew up on newsstand books." Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. I think they would, and I think they absolutely would stand out now because, I mean, I don't see anybody doing it really. I'm not saying that no one does. I'm just saying I don't really see it.
Kids graphic novels. You do see
that.
that.
Some do. Most of the time I see now a major motion picture sticker on the front. That's
yeah.
No, I also see like what they'll do, I think is neat, is the title will actually be in a word balloon being spoken by the main character.
Okay. No, that's kind of, yeah. But that's a little different. Wait a minute, you talking about the title of the series or the title of the story?
The title of the series. So it'll be like a Spider-Man comic, but then Spider-Man saying Spider-Man in a word balloon.
Yeah, I don't count that. That don't count. Hyper Potato says, "I remember learning the word Armageddon as a wee tyke from a Roy Thomas issue of Sergeant Fury." Yeah.
I used to read, when I read that Appleseed manga, he has a lot of politics, even stuff today that very because it's a whole political structure they do. And as a kid, I I understood a little bit what was going on, but not really. I
Mhm.
had to research a lot. Even when I go back and read the still stuff, I'm like, I don't know. It's very interpretation, but but again, I mean, the thing is like I liked robots and mecha. I mean, I grew up with Voltron and robots.
Yeah.
You see, Appleseed's got robots. I'm like, robots, that's awesome. So that's more what I was into it for when I was a kid. Was
Yeah.
all these crazy robotic images he had.
Yeah.
So, and American comics didn't do robots really well. I don't know why. They kept adding muscles to them. Still never figured out how why the
Right.
Sentinels had like a 6-pack, and I'm like, it's an American superhero comic thing. I mean, it's fine. I remember as a kid, I never could figure out how Iron Man can move. He's like in an iron suit. I'm like, yeah, but there's no like split at the elbow. It's just like solid
Right.
iron. So it's like
Yeah.
maybe it was some sort of mesh or something. I mean,
but
it's a
he-
comic book. But yeah.
But he
Aaron,
did-
I am on your side with that, but I just want to point out a couple examples that do. Frankenstein Jr. for Hanna-Barbera, that is an actual mech, like Gigantor.
Yeah.
And then you have Robot Boy, you have Rusty. So
Yeah.
there are a couple examples.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I didn't. I still love the Sentinels. Thought they were great or whatever. Yeah,
Dempsey
robots
Blackman
are
says robots are great.
Yeah, robots are some of my favorite. They don't do not even a manga. There's not a lot of robots, mecha. A lot of it. It's kind of a bummer.
Well, so much of that stuff seems to be real life stuff today. Have you seen what they're
Yeah,
doing?
I
The
know.
Japanese are doing with robots. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
robots and stuff. Yeah.
Scary stuff.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, when I was a kid, I mean, I was into Saturday morning cartoons, and so any comic that reflected certain visual things I was into, I would get into the comics. I know
Well,
I did after X-Men. I did go down and find New Warriors #1, and I decided to read that. I really liked New Warriors, even though there was, and even then I was like, this guy's telekinetic, but his name's Justice, and he has a cape, and why? So I mean, my favorite I think was the Night Thrasher guy. He's like this Batman guy, but he rides like a skateboard.
And
I'm like,
yeah. I know
and I was like, okay.
I think
didn't-
Tommy inked some of them.
did he?
Yeah.
There's this fun light novel manga series I'm reading where it had an anime adaptation, and it's just your typical harem thingy.
Mhm.
But then halfway through, it all of a sudden turns into a giant mech a series.
The
The
Japanese
anime
do that a
stops
lot.
right.
More than
That's
Americans,
funny.
the Japanese will start one comic one way, and then something they find is cool, and they'll completely flip it and change it. I've seen series that start as like you said, like, oh, it's their samurai, but now they're samurai robots, and now they're in space, and it's like, wait, what? What's going on? Because the writer just found something new he liked and put it in there. So
What do you want to draw? I want to draw
I
samurai
wanna draw
robots in
now,
space.
so this is where
Make
we're
one
going.
a cat, and then we have a deal.
Yeah. Which I don't mind. I mean, they do those series for so long that even as an artist, I'm like, man, the amount of time I'm like, I don't know if I can spend that's a decade, a year of my life doing the same thing. I mean, I like doing one story, but I got to draw some other stuff sometimes.
Yeah. How long have you been working on Godlings?
That was 6 years, but I think I got it 6 years, but I was working full time and I did 2 kids books in that and then other projects.
Yeah.
But yeah, after that, I'm like, do I really want to draw? Yeah.
6 years. That's a long time.
Yeah. Not as long as some of these manga artists. Oh my God.
No, I know. I'm just saying though.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Pretty soon, I'm like itching. I was thinking ideas. Like, I really want to draw some of. That's why my next series is like 3 or 4 issues that I'm doing personally.
I want to jump back to the show don't tell thing. So obviously, this is one of the things that they always teach prose writers: show don't tell, show don't tell, and I think they do movie as well. I make the argument in comics you have to do both. You have to tell sometimes. However, please hear me. I don't mean telling in a cheesy, crappy way, right? And let me give you an example. 2 characters walk into a room. You don't know who they are. How are you going to know? If you and I were to walk into the room, and we do, hey, dude, what's going on? Right?
Yeah.
Right? We know each other. But if 2 characters walk into the room, how is the reader going to know who they are?
I would think, and now you're talking introducing them as a new character.
No, just issue 4.
Issue 4
How they
walking
look.
in.
You look at them.
Yeah.
But how do you know what their names are?
Oh, because their names you're asking about. Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, that again, you're talking about the idea where they put the little, if I'm getting you right, like the caption, like, this is Tom, and like the little caption.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
why I never minded that way.
Yeah, I
doing
don't know that that's the best, but that's certainly one way, and it can work.
You
Right?
could also have somebody in the room, say if they're going to a meeting, the guy's like, "Oh, Mr. So and so or Mr. and Mrs. So and so, thank you for coming," and you got the other person say it. There is that, but again, that's only if they're in a meeting, like the other person's expecting them.
That's correct,
So-
Aaron. But we don't really call each other by name all the time, right, Aaron? I mean, would you agree, Jeremy?
No. I
Because it
agree.
sounds weird to us. It
Yeah.
makes us go, "Ooh, why are you saying my name?" Right? That's Cassisi says they would argue dialogue. Yeah, so he was saying that show don't tell thing. So that's the thing I think that you have to remember in comics is that because we don't have sound and we don't have movement, right? And so
Yep.
there are things that you sometimes have to tell. That said, don't do it in a cheesy, chintzy kind of way, right? Don't do it like comics in the 1950s did. Thor punches Hulk with a mighty blow.
Yeah,
I can see that. Tell me something else, right? If I don't know who the characters are, they have to call each other by name, right? They have to
Yeah.
call each other by name, or you can use the caption boxes. This is Wolverine, which is what Claremont did, right?
Yeah.
Wolverine. He's the best he is at what he does, and what he does is very nice, right? I mean, again, that's one way. There are other things about like powers, right? How do you, as fans, you want to know about their powers. Spider-Man's not going to say, "Here, I'm shooting my webbing at you that I created in my bedroom last night using these formulae," right? No, he's not going to say that, right? But as a fan, you want to know. You want to know that information. So how do you get that to the reader? And that's the challenging part for a writer is that how do you deliver that without being cheesy, right? Without
basically breaking the fourth wall in a little bit.
Yeah. So I think there are times when, as a writer, you have to tell, right? But you have to. But again, in saying that, you can't do it in a cheesy way. And that's not easy to do, right?
No, I mean you could do. I mean, yeah, if they walk into, if you could do scenes. I mean, depends on the scene. If they walk in, I mean, I guess it could be like what happens next. I mean, walking into a room, you may not know who they are, but the concurring scene, the scene following it, may explain who they are.
Yeah.
For instance, I always use the introduction to the original movie Blade. The movie's called Blade, but the introduction to that entire movie just summed up that character. I mean, that one beginning scene was like, that's all you just need to know about this guy. That's it.
Yeah.
You have the whole club with the vampires all doing their thing. He walks in and just starts killing him. Like, okay, guy hunts vampires. That's it. Very quick. I mean, and you walk in, you don't know that character. I mean, you've seen the movie poster, you know who Blade is technically, right? But you don't know who he is. He just walks in and starts kind of like grinning. You can see this guy's eager to kind of like take these, and all the vampires are fearful of him. They're backing up because they know who this guy is. And so, but him just walk in, you don't know. But the scene coming up will explain it, and it explains spades. It's such a good opening scene. I mean, there's been the original Indiana Jones did that. Now, these are movie examples,
right?
Well, I mean,
but I would even say that.
Let's go back to this.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, like that leads into the splash pages that comics used to have, where they show you the character in action, so you know what their powers are up front. You might have a crowd reacting to the character in the fight, so you get the name from that. So
look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you see Superman's name. They know who he is. You see he's flying, so you know he can fly.
Yeah. And so that would, I guess, could technically be an example of telling. Right. There's these people on the ground telling you, look, that's Superman. Right. You see what I'm saying? So I think sometimes in comics you have to break that show don't tell. As long as you don't do it in a stupid way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still remember there was a Star Wars comic called The Dark Empire or something, and they made a sequel to it.
Yeah,
Dark Horse. And I remember I was excited for the sequel, but they did the old 50s you're talking. Like they showed, I remember like there's a picture of Han Solo and Leia running down a corridor, and at the top it said Han Solo and Leia run down a corridor. I'm like, hey, you don't need to do that. And they did it throughout the entire book. The writers had nothing else to write except it was literally reciting what's happening in the scene, and almost
That's
closed
funny.
caption for like the hard of hearing, but there's no sound, so you don't need to, Chief. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It was. I remember reading that, going like, "Wow, this is really self-referential." I mean, does not. I mean, did the editor not read through and realize this, or just, you know?
Yeah. And see, about your Blade scene is what that does, even though it might not have established the name, what it does, it establishes who he is and what he
Exactly.
does, right? And
Yeah.
so we're going to assume, like you said, you saw the movie poster, you're going to see the movie called Blade.
You're gonna
right?
recognize.
So
I mean,
so
they did that with the original X-Men, first X-Men movie, then they introduced Wolverine. I mean, they did a pretty good job of that scene at the bar.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, now you know who this guy is.
Right.
At least you know what he can do.
Yeah. And this
Knives
is
coming
where
out.
this is where I would argue that a lot of independent comics fail is they spend a lot of time doing stuff that doesn't advance the story, right?
Yeah.
I always say, what if you're the writer, ask yourself, what does this page accomplish in my story?
I think I would argue a little bit on that. The only reason I argue about that is whether you're doing a character study or if you're doing a plot-driven story. Plot-driven story, you got to stay with it.
Doesn't
But
matter.
there are character moments that can come out, but I would say they're in the context of the story.
Okay.
I mean, there are character moments all the time in like Lord of the Rings, but in the context of the journey.
Sure, and that's the thing. Is it what it does? It develops and further builds the character,
right?
Giving so it accomplishes something, and I think that's what you have to ask: is what does it accomplish? And you see a lot of independent comics, or a handful of independent comics, that they have a couple of pages and nothing happens.
Oh yeah.
You know,
or they jump too quick. I mean, I've seen the opposite where, guy comes in, it's like, who are you? Evil villain, let's fight. And then you fight and you have no idea why. So that also works,
Jeff said, I've always said that the purpose of the first chapter is to plant a question in the reader's mind. The need to answer that question is what pulls them through the book. Oh, yeah. I think that's fair. I don't think it always has to be a question. I think it does have to be something that makes them say, I want to know the answer. Well, I guess that would be a question, right?
That would be a hook. I mean, considering all stories are literally solving a problem. I mean, all stories are a complication of a problem. You're introducing the problem in the beginning. So that would be an introduction of a story.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, even with holding the character's name, like your example of the Blade one, then
you never know his name.
Well, yes, I'm interested in this character. Who is he? You have a little bit. You have a little knowledge of it. Now you want to see more about him and find out what's his name and so forth. So you're more invested in going forward.
Yeah, especially they don't even say his name in the beginning. The vampire's like, it's him. It's the Daywalker. But they don't even say his name except what they call him, which I thought was.
Now you want to know what the Daywalker means? Go into blind.
What does that mean? What are they saying?
Yeah. Who is this guy? And why does he do this? Right?
Yeah.
So
it was one of those. Indiana Jones was also great introduction to that character. The original Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Which people have studied in film history. I mean, you have this guy just getting the treasure, and I mean, within 10, 15 minutes, you pretty much know what this guy's about.
You know what he does.
Yeah.
Well, all right, fellas. As always happens, our clock has run, and so it is time to wrap up our show. Once again, thank you guys for all of you who supported Wolf Hunter 1 and Sirens number 1, the remix version. You guys are awesome. As you know what happens next, we will have to send you out. We got to wait till Kickstarter sends us the funds. But while they're doing that, we're going to send out some surveys to you. Please be sure to answer the surveys, because if I don't know where to send your book, I can't send you a book. So for instance, with our last Kickstarter with the Sniper and Rook and Rejects number 1, I got 2 books. Whoever you are, you did not respond to my emails. You didn't fill out a survey. And so I got 2 books here I got 2 packages here that I can't send out because I don't know where to send them. So you got to let
somebody
me know.
Random.
Here's we're gonna stand out on the corner. Here you go.
There you go.
So I checked my shipping thing just before we started, and it looks like all of the books for that last campaign have been delivered except for one. So if you're watching this and you don't have your Sniper and Rook #1 and Rejects #1, I'm sorry. You're the only one whose package hasn't been delivered yet. Everyone else's package has been delivered. So again, thank you guys for that. It won't take us long before we'll start talking about what we're going to do. Our next Kickstarter will be in May. But it won't take us long before we start talking about that. Kasisi says, great discussion. And thanks all. Thank you again, Kasisi. Kasisi, we're going to get you to jump on here, maybe here or Tuesday with us sometime. If I remember correctly, I think you're out on the West Coast, so you'd be good jumping in with the Tuesday bunch. Anyway, Jeremy, thank you so much for jumping in tonight. It was fun. Tell people where they can find you on the interwebs.
Yes, you can find me, I guess, my portfolio site, jcon.org, but on Twitter, Jeremy M. Con, on YouTube at AP Joy Paint. And I did start with Twitch, but my computer died before I could really get into that. So once I get that back started up again, I'll share that.
Okay, sounds good. And for those of you who are interested in coloring, Jeremy's working up a little something that he's putting together for the Silverline channel. So if you're interested in coloring, be sure to bombard Jeremy with hey, where's it? Well, I need it. Let's get it done. Aaron, what about you? Where can folks find you on the interwebs?
Facebook, Humphreys Illustration, or just my name, Aaron Humphreys. My Instagram, Humphreys Illustration, just like it is on the little title up there. The Big Cartel is my store, so all of my comics are in the store. I haven't posted. I've been absent on Facebook. I just keep forgetting. So I'm coming back. But yeah, anybody who's interested in buying all the single issues of my comic are there. I'm waiting on the collected version of that. Hint,
Cool.
Tommy.
How many pages
I
did
am
it end
waiting.
up being?
Yeah.
No.
But yeah, so if you go to my site, it's strange enough, you have to go to the comic book portion of my store to find it. They list all of them but the last two. And if you hit comic books, then it'll bring up the last two. I don't know why that is. I'm still trying to figure that out. But they're on there.
How many pages did it end up being total?
It is 200. If you count, it's 300, but 24 story pages a pop. So you're talking 290 pages.
290 pages. Wow.
Right.
Very cool. Nice. Yeah. Well, congratulations. I know that's something you've been working since we started talking. It's something you've been working towards. So congratulations on finishing that. That's quite an achievement. Yeah.
Thank you, Roland.
And I am Roland. You can find me on all the social medias. Roland Man. Sometimes it's Man Roland. Twitter, Facebook, Insta, all those other stuff. I'm not on any of them as much as I probably should be. But the good news is because I'm doing stuff, right? I'm doing sometimes I'm grading, I'm writing, working on Silverline stuff. So yeah. Don't forget to I can't let's see if I can find out where's the team Silverline here. Don't forget to join the Tuesday group as they talk about Clip Studio, Tools of the Craft. It's gonna be Clip Studio on Tuesday night. And then Wednesday Wham, Tom Mason is going to return to the Silverline stream, but this time he's going to talk to the Whammers on Wednesday. And here's their topic: why the big two are dead ends. So Tom Mason has very strong opinions on this, and I am very much looking forward to hearing what he has to say with the Whammers. And with that, remember to
make mine Silverline.
Make mine Silverline. And I have the wrong screen up to start my thing going here. So make mine Silverline again.
Hey, I'm Alex Saviuk, and I just want to let you know, make mine Silverline.